Hello, it's Phillip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. Today I'm looking at a book, a new edition of a book from the Child Poverty Action Group. Very important book which you'll see around. It's in reference libraries. It'll certainly be at the Citizens Advice Bureaus. It's called Debt Advice. It's the Debt Advice Handbook, a very important book for this day and age, and in fact any day and age, because many people get into debt, and this is a book which will help people. It's now in a 12th edition. It's been written by a number of people. Mike Wolfe is the main contributor, and it's been updated by Peter Madge, John Kruse, David Malcom, Katherine and Ros White. Now Elizabeth and I've looked at this book, and Elizabeth actually wrote the review this time as the lead writer. Normally I tend to do these, but she's done this particular one, we had a long chat about it. And the title we've given for our review is Authoritative Advice on Debt from the Child Poverty Action Group, now in a new edition. And the new edition is of course for 2018. Let's have a look at the book first of all, because it's a standard format, for a standard house format. There's the front of it, there's the spine, and then there's the back. There's a lot of information you can see. Trouble is with the way it is with these inverted colours, it's not the easiest thing to read, but you can see there's a lot of quotes and various other things there. The book is published jointly with the Institute of Money Advisors, and the book, as you see, there's a shaded area there, and then at the back you've got an index. So we go to the back first of all, some stuff about the CPAG there, then there's the back of the book. The book is actually by page numbering. It's a big book. It runs to just under 600 pages. The index itself is quite a substantial one, which is helpful because there's a lot of information which you may be looking for. And if you just get to the front of it, you can see there's the index starting there, and it explains how to use the index. And it does explain, as with many legal publications, they have their own way of doing the indexes, but this index is very helpful. Then you've got 4 appendices, and then you get to the appendices are there. You can see they start off with, just want to get to useful organisations and addresses and so forth, websites, that sort of thing. Then you get to the basic book itself, 17 chapters, all the shaded areas there. If we go to the front of the book, there is the first front page. Then after that you've got a blurb about the book itself, and you've got the details about who the authors are. They're established people with tremendous amount of expertise. We're very grateful to them for producing this work, because without it, it would make life a lot easier. There's some basic acknowledgements, then a foreword. Do read the foreword, because it does help you if you're an advisor or someone who needs some assistance. It's been written by Robert Wilson, who's the Chief Executive of the Institute of Money Advisors. Then you have the contents section itself. You can see debt advice and outline key skills, stages of debt advice, and so forth. And then you're running through, you can see the index runs through, sorry, the contents rather, runs through. Then there's a section which CPAG always have, which is very important. It says how to use this book. Now, it's really important to know how to use you get your way around this book, because there's an awful lot of very confusing stuff out there. The abbreviation section is also particularly helpful, because we have attended to bring lots of abbreviations in. The IT age has done that as well. Going back through most of my life, I have to say working life, we've had a huge increase in the number of abbreviations. Then you've got introduction, so it's setting out the actual point of the book. What is debt advice? There's a quote. And then you've got the actual chapter numbers, and you see this chapter covers, so there's a little index at the front of each of the chapters which tells you what the chapter is going to cover. And there's a lot of detail in this particular book. You can see it starts off in the way, if we run through, you can then see quite a large amount of information, and you'll find at the back of each chapter effectively footnotes with all the relevant information. That includes all of the authorities, or the people you need to go to, the case law, the Acts of Parliament, the statutory instruments, and so forth. And that runs all the way through. There's chapter 15, which is looking at personal insolvency and bankruptcy, for instance. It's a very important book. It's something which many people have used in the past, and it's one that I'm afraid we have to have on a regular basis because it is a big issue. And of course, as society changes, a lot of people do get into debt, and a lot of people overextend themselves. And I hope this book will be of some help to them and their families. So what do we say about the book? Well, we say this: since the dawn of time, debt has always been the result of borrowing. A truism, yes, but as this handbook reminds us, debt, that's what we call unmanageable debt, that is recognised by the credit industry as a necessary corollary of lending. It's all part and parcel of the whole thing. If you didn't have lending, you wouldn't have debt. It's also a key factor in cases of child poverty, hence the ever-present need for this handbook from the Child Poverty Action Group. And this latest edition, it's the 12th, no less, coming out for 2018, of what is now on a long-established work of reference, only goes to show how indispensable it's become. Now, from lawyers to social workers and housing officers to any professional practitioner tasked with dealing with the consequences of child poverty in particular, they will value this handbook as a comprehensive and reliable source of advice. I certainly do, and I don't know that advisors across the charitable field do so as well. Now, the cardinal virtues of the book, however, are its authority and accessibility for virtually anyone with debt problems or who possibly anticipates such problems. This is a relatively easy read and easy to use book. And I say that because some of them aren't. And what we're dealing with here and what some of the other titles that CPAG published deal with are very complicated issues indeed. And it's made even more impenetrable by the nonsense from Parliament. When it could make it relatively simple, they don't. The civil servants are to blame mainly, in my view, but the fact is we get, as a result, very complicated systems running, which are really quite difficult for people to follow. And in fact, it's admitted to me, in public as well as private, by the leading players in these fields, that most of them don't know all the rules. How can you? It's not possible. But I'm afraid that's where we are. So, as I say, the cardinal virtues are its authority and accessibility. For virtually anyone with debt problems or who possibly anticipates such problems, this is a relatively easy book, as I say, to read. Unrepresented parties, we feel in particular, would be well advised to have a serious read of this book and or take it along to court if they have some sort of issues that have to be decided. And the title, of course, Debt Advice, is apt. Virtually everyone has debt, it points out, but when debt becomes unmanageable, the need for debt advice arises, and that's the trigger point. The cautionary note here is that for a number of reasons that are carefully explained, debt advice, debt counselling and money advice are not quite the same things. Debt advice is essentially crisis management in the key statement here, and that's really where people like myself come in, because that's when the crunch period is almost upon us. Now, for the benefit of readers, professional or otherwise, the book is logically structured, which means it's easy to look things up. A table of cases is detailed, yes, and so is the index at the back. Usefully, there's a how to use this handbook section at the beginning, and a handy list of abbreviations, which I've certainly found very useful, so readers can also cross-refer to other relevant publications and to further guidance and the law. Now, the Child Poverty Action Group advises that the handbook is the set text for the Institute of Money Advisors in money advice practice, which endorses it, and that's why the logo's on the back, as an indispensable resource for all advisors, and that's exactly what it is. And as you would expect, this new edition has been updated with much new material, including the latest legislation, case law, court procedure and practice. And the debt protection protocol is included, as well as the new debtor's bankruptcy application. Of course, you've also got payment protection insurance and parking charges are covered, plus matters relating to enforcement of overseas judgment. Now, I'm going to say something here, and that is that it will depend on the court and the attitudes, but generally speaking, most people are trying to help There are certain people who aren't, and I'm well aware of who they are, and I'm not going to mention them. Obviously, local authorities do come to mind for some people. But generally speaking, people are there to help, because we can all be in this problem area. And so therefore I think it's important to bear in mind that not everybody's against you, and we are trying, and I think the aims of Parliament over the last few years have been to make it easier to alleviate some of the pain where possible. Because in my view, and I know that I speak now as both a councillor in terms of a local authority elected member and also a barrister at law, in terms of the experiences I've had in these various functions, the fact of the matter is that we are trying to help people, and we're not trying to get too disciplinary with them. Some people do. Bank managers are well known for it as bullies. That's where the bullying starts. You get in the school playground, and then it starts big time when you have to go to these organisations. So you've got to be very careful. But debt advice itself is about the crisis element, and I think that's where the book comes in. And as I've said, you get a lot of excellent up-to-date information. And apropos crisis management itself, let me say this. The handbook gives cogent advice on various debt emergencies, priority debts, business debts, student debts, and so forth, and how to cope in court, plus further advice on enforcement. Now, the chapter on powers of bailiffs is instructive here, especially on what they can and can't do, the latter being slightly more important in many cases than the former. And I think it's always very important to bear in mind that I have to say, on many occasions, they go way above and beyond what they've got the power to do. Most people don't know because they're terrified. And it's a disgrace, and there's really very little protection you're going to get. You certainly won't get it from the police service, and it's very unlikely you're going to get a very good hearing from a local authority. And I have to say that because that is the big depressing truth about their behaviour. And again, I'd like to see central government rein in some of those powers. They could do, but they don't really want to at the moment because they're involved in the business of leaving the European Union, which is a totally different issue. Let me conclude by saying this, although it will cause more debt. Let me make this point. For debt advisors, all those in debt themselves, this handbook, which it lists with its lists of useful organisations and publications, is, I think, an essential purchase. It's not an expensive book to buy, but I do think you will find it extremely helpful. And if I can just say, the law, as far as the editor and the authors are concerned, the law covered in this book is cited as correct as at the 1st of November 2017, and it includes regulations laid up to that date. And the book was published as for general consumption on the 31st of January 2018, and I'm recording that just after that period. Now here's the book again. There it is, a very good book indeed. There's the spine, and then you've got a lot of interesting quotes which you can see on the back there from people saying how helpful it's been. It is a very good reference book, there's no doubt about it. Opening it in the middle, action in the county court money claims, preventing enforcement. There we go. I'm not going to open it up too widely. Things are changing at the moment, of course, because a lot of the work that I do, we are not talking anymore about using things like checkbooks and so on. It's real-time cash we're talking about. Chapter 12, actions in the county court, this recovering goods on hire purchase. You can see the structure laid out. There's a huge amount of information. As I said, I have a high admiration for the Child Poverty Action Group because of the work they do, which goes largely unsung, I hasten to add, which is why I do these reviews. I do believe that what we have here is a very, very useful practical book for a very wide range of people in trouble. And you make our lives a lot easier by publishing these books. And I'm very grateful that they're available so widely, because it does assist. As I've said before, I consider that quite a large number of the cases that I see, it should never get that far, but it does. Sometimes it's because of appalling behaviour by the lenders, and there's no doubt about that. Their behaviour can be dreadful. But I'm afraid that's part of human nature, and we have to act accordingly. There are checks and balances in the system as well. And if you know your way around this book. I'm hoping it will assist. So a big thank you to CPAG, to all the people involved, and I hope you find this review and where it's published in the journals and online of some help, and good luck for the future. Bye bye.